Welcome back. Everything should be working now. Everything should be working now. Had to update some of the bitrate settings, etc. to make sure it was running not laggy. Hopefully it works. And you all can see and hear me beautifully. So we will see. I think it should be good. I think it should be good. Everything looks nice. Sweet. All right. So today we are doing Rosetta Speculative tier list. Also going to go over some example deck lists of what that might look like. Should be fun. Excited about it. I think it'll be nice to, yeah, a little way to discuss what the meta is going to look like. I'll repost the tier list section to YouTube, and I will keep the deck example section here to the live stream. It's kind of the plan at the moment. Yeah, if you have any questions while I'm streaming, be sure to let me know. But yeah, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. But I think it should be a good time. Excited for it. Alrighty. 1 second and we'll hop right in. Hope everyone's having a good weekend so far. I'm excited to hop into the tier list. I've been really enjoying watching everything with the live stream in Tampa. Makes me a little sad because I'm from Tampa, so I really wish I could be there, but understandable. Because I'm in Amsterdam now. But yeah, going to put this on while having breakfast. Sweet. Yeah, I mean, upside of me being in Europe now, I suppose, is that the European audience gets me. It does make me a little sad when they do the US live streams. Like I said, the Tampa live stream starts at like 5 p.m. and runs until well past when I'm sleeping. So I much prefer morning live streams myself. Yeah. Okay. I think it's good to talk about the meta. So we're going to get started. Hey everyone. Welcome back to Bagel TCG. Today we're going to be doing a speculative tier list for the Rosetta meta, going over the impact of the new cards and the new heroes, how all of that's going to affect the Classic Constructed meta. We also just had a massive change with the banned and restricted announcement, essentially banning every major card advantage tool in the game that draws 2, plus Bonds of Ancestry. So that really shakes up a lot of what's going on. Made sense though, as we're seeing the Rosetta cards, some of those draw 2 tomes would have been a little absurd, because they are really making it easy to play non-attacks as instants or give them go again. So it would have been a little too good, but we're going to go over the meta here, talk about what it looks like maybe before the Rosetta heroes, and then we'll place the Rosetta heroes last and see where they fit into that meta. Based off the previous meta, Zen was the clear best deck, and then New and some of the other backup decks that were trying to beat it, like Victor, Azuri. These were all decks trying to beat Zen, and KO was kind of in there as well, had an okay matchup. These decks were all trying to beat Zen. New was notoriously the best at this, but none of them could quite catch up to him, right? Watching from Hawaii, what's up? But yeah, no one could quite keep up with Zen, right? He just did too much, but they have now taken most of his powerful cards from him. They've taken Bonds of Ancestry, which was his best attack, and they've taken Art of War, which is how he really did his major pop-off turns. So clearly, Zen is not going to be S tier anymore. Is he A tier? I think that remains to be seen. I think he's a safe B tier for now. He can still do powerful stuff with his Crouching Tigers. Like, all of the Crouching Tiger synergy is still there. So I'm sure he'll have some strong stuff he can do with, like, Chase the Tail. That card's always been quite powerful. Maybe you can lean more into the Majestic Swam. I can never remember the full name because it's 5 words. But the Shifting Winds of the something that makes 2 tigers in hands, and then it can be any card. So he has a lot of synergy still. He's just going to have to focus more on what they actually intended Zen to be, which is a Crouching Tiger deck, and not what he ended up being, which was a Bonds of Ancestry combo deck. So Zen, I'll put in B tier for now. But let's discuss where these other heroes end up. Not just these other powerful heroes that were in the meta, but overall. Starting with Nu. Nu's in an interesting place because Nu was there to prey on Zen. So automatically you think she's a little bit weaker because she doesn't have the deck she's there to beat still around. But Nu is quite strong on her own. And we got some interesting cards to help some of her worst matchups. So if we can go to the spoilers and then scroll all the way down to the expansion slot, there is a full cycle. There's a lot of cards in this set. There's a full cycle of equipment for Assassin. So these Widow blanks, so Widow Veil, Widow Back, Widow Claw, Widow Web, and they all just say Arcane Barrier 1, Spell Void 1. Wizard was certainly one of the worst matchups for Assassin, Kano in particular. There was very little Nu could usually do, or Azuri, to beat Kano. I think a lot of decks, for example, the deck I submitted for Pro Tour and that my teammate took to top 4 of the Pro Tour, had no Arcane Barrier or Oasis Respite at all. Just completely was okay with a 0% win rate into Kano. Now, there are 2 new wizards in the meta, which would make you think, okay, now we've gone from 1 to 3 wizards, this must be really bad. But they banned the most broken stuff for Kano, which was his tomes. So there's no Tome of Fyendal or Tome of something, the other one that draws 2. I'm not a wizard player. But they took away 6 total draw 2 cards from Kano, so he is certainly weaker. And they gave us these new powerful anti-wizard tech, right? So Arcane Barrier 1, you could already just run the full Nullrune suite, right? But now you have Spell Void 1 as well, which is pretty incredible combo. This can act as Nullrune all game until they do their pop-off turn, and then you can use it as Spell Void. You can threaten lethal without having any resources floating and still have a bunch of Spell Void back. So I mean, maybe you'll run all 4, but I think it's maybe a bit wild to run all 4. But you'll certainly be running some number of these, maybe 3 of them, I would guess, into Wizard, and that's going to be a pretty significant boost. So all that to say, I think the only severely bad matchups for Nu now, as someone who primarily was playing Nu, I think the only really bad matchups are Illusionist, particularly Enigma, especially Reality Refractor Enigma, and any deck with Valiant Dynamo, because that is really hard to beat with the Mistblades. I think those are the 2 main bad matchups. I think Wizard's probably acceptable now with the decrease in power they get from losing all their tomes and the additional expansion slot cards. So I'm just going to keep her in A tier, actually. I talked a lot to just keep her in A tier, but I think she lost a good matchup. Some of her bad matchups might be getting better, like Enigma and the Valiant Dynamo decks, I think are getting slightly better. But she got some anti-wizard tools. So I'm going to keep both Azuri and Nu and in A tier. Because I think the Assassins are still really powerful, but I don't think they're going to like absolutely dominate the meta. On to KO though. I do think KO might be S tier again, or at least the highest deck in A tier. He didn't have the best matchup into Zen, and now Zen has gotten weaker. And I think he is just always going to be a powerful, consistent deck while he's around. He got nothing taken from him. He just had the rest of the meta get weaker. Like, he still has Blood Rush Bellows, and all his power cards, the rest of the meta just had, or a lot of the rest of the meta had its power cards taken. So, yeah, I think KO's in a great spot still. I think I'll just leave him. I guess I feel like I should put somebody in S tier. I really don't know if there's an S tier at the moment. But would KO be considered part of it? He's really kind of top of A, but since we're getting speculative, I'll say he's S tier. Last in here is Victor. Victor's interesting because he was mostly here to prey on Zen as well, which is why I brought these all in. He ended up having an okay assassin matchup, particularly into Nu, when he was in that full aggro variant. But Victor's worst matchup since his release, essentially, or one of his worst matchups, has been KO. And KO was not very popular compared to what he could have been because of how popular Zen was, right? They're both aggro decks. Most aggro players correctly played Zen because he was just so overpowered. So KO ended up not being that popular. Victor was very happy about this because he destroyed Zen, but lost quite hard to KO. Now it's kind of swapped, and that is really bad for Victor. So I think Victor's down. I would have had him in A tier, and I think last meta he was A tier, but I think I'm going to unfortunately have to put him in B tier as long as KO's good. KO is just such a horrendous matchup for Victor. It's just really, really bad. Oh, wow, that went away. We do have, I'm kind of just going over everything that's not from the new set first, right? In terms of, new heroes. I'm going over how these expansion slot cards will affect them. So this is a really good Rhinar card, Splatter Skull. It says, when this hits a hero, choose a face-down card in their banished zone that was banished by Intimidate this turn, put it into their graveyard. That's really, really good. Really good. A huge payoff for Intimidate that we didn't have before. I think that Rhinar was already pretty decent. Probably at least B tier, because he can kind of beat Victor and the Assassins. But I'm gonna, like I said, this is speculative tier lists. These are all early predictions with no data, so I get to make my most incorrect predictions. So I will put Rhinar in A tier, because I think Splatter Skull is just that good, and I think he has a pretty decent matchup spread into the initial meta. Similarly to KO, he got to keep his powerful Draw 2 tool in Blood Rush Bellows, when the rest of the meta lost their Artivores and Tome of Yendels. So, yeah, I think Rhinar could end up being really good. Maybe still weaker than his one-armed brother, but quite good. Drink 'em Under the Table is a new Betsy card, the specialization for her that says, when this attacks a hero, you may wager with them. The winner draws a card and the other hero discards a card. Very good, of course. About as powerful as Weakest Link in terms of yeah, you getting to go up a whole card and they go down a card, so it's double the effect. So quite powerful in that sense. A bit more expensive, obviously specific to her. But this card's really, really good. Is it enough to make Old Betsy viable? We need the log weapon, okay? We need the log weapon. I don't know why we haven't had the log weapon, but we need the log weapon. I'll put her in a crazy B tier, all right? She was probably D tier last meta, where she belongs. But I have faith. I have faith in Drink 'em Under the Table, bringing Betsy up to B tier. She's going to... The log! Look, she's got the log. She has this log weapon. She's got this massive log weapon. Why does she not... Why can't she play with this? Every art of her has this massive log weapon. We need the log weapon to be released. Then I think she's broken. If she gets a weapon called the log that wagers, instant S tier. Poor Katsu got Gust Wave of the Second Wind. Unfortunately for Katsu, he lost Art of War and Bonds of Ancestry. Oh, poor Katsu. Will be our first D tier. He truly died for Zen Sins. Lost every power tool. He got this cool new combo card that doesn't even work with anything. Because it was here to combo into Bonds, and then Bonds got taken away. Rest in peace, Katsu. I'm sure he'll be back one day, but it won't be anytime soon. Here we have Adaptive Dissolver. This is mostly intended for Tekla, so we can start with Arcane Barrier. But any of the other mechs can play it as kind of a cool AB piece that they can equip stuff onto because it's base. I know dashes were playing some of those 3-block mech arms, the Evos. And so this could be good. Maybe if you need to worry about Wizard and then eventually switch into something more powerful, but I don't know why you would, against Wizard, equip something on top of this because you need the Arcane Barrier. Maybe you just play this because it's flexible. But I don't know. I'm gonna say this really doesn't change anything for Wizard. Maybe it makes Tekla slightly better, but I don't think their Wizard matchup changes too much outside of Kano getting much worse, which I think Kano losing 6 tomes matters way more than them getting Adaptive Dissolver, honestly. So that's all mechs got, but where are mechs in the meta? Dash and Dash.io kind of doing similar things, both being different variants of mech aggro, have been doing quite well. They had a matchup into Zen that was okay. The main thing is they lose horribly to Nu and into Assassin, but they're not bad into like KO and the Brutes and the other decks. But most notably, oh yeah, it's not here because it's in a different thing. There's an Armory deck Dash coming up. This is coming out a little later than the main set, but there are some really powerful Dash.io cards in here. I don't know when this officially releases, unfortunately, because it doesn't say on the February page. But there's this card and this card are both absolutely busted for Dash.io. So I'm gonna say now is the time to become a Dash.io player and get in, learn the deck before those new cards come out, because I think they're gonna be really game changing, really game changing for her. So now is definitely the time to get in and learn Dash.io before the new Armory deck comes out. So I'll put Dash.io at A tier with in mind that there's these new cards coming out. Maybe exactly on Rosetta release she doesn't have that, but I think this is coming out soon-ish. I wonder if it's in the product releases already. Upcoming? October 18th. Okay, so it comes out a month after Rosetta. So yeah, a month after Rosetta, Dash.io will be A tier. On Rosetta release, she'll be B tier. I suppose since this is a Rosetta tier list, I should put her in B tier for now. And I think other Dash will stay B tier, but I think Dash.io is going to get a huge boost up to A tier after her Armory kit, because so far we've only seen a few cards and they all seem insanely good for her. So I think Dash.io will be a real contender for one of the best aggro decks in the format after October 18th, when her Armory deck comes out. And she's a pretty complicated deck to play, so I would recommend picking her up now if you intend on playing her, just to get a good month of practice in before she gets the big boost. Pun intended, I suppose. For other mechs, we've got Teklo and Max. All the mechs are not bad, but I can't like just slam them all in B tier. Tiers actually need to mean something, like overpowered, very good, above average, average, below average. So I'll say both of these guys are average. Like, they can do really powerful things. Max got Supercell. Teklo got some new powerful Evos that have Arcane Barrier. I think they're also blue 0-cost instance, which is pretty nice. So both of these had gotten pretty nice boosts in Mysteria. They're not really getting anything at all this time around, but the Mysteria boosts are still carrying them to a decent power level. I think in certain matchups, these could both, win like a Battle Harden maybe. I just think maybe their matchup spread is not consistent enough to take down like a Calling or something like that. Next up, we have Plan for the Worst. Look at target hero's hand and arsenal. At the beginning of the next end phase, they discard all cards in their hand and destroy all cards in their arsenal. You find traps. This is obviously a Riptide card. Riptide, I think, is quite good. The Sunflower Samurais with Pablo Pintor on them brought him to Pro Tour, which I think says a lot. And I think both the Rangers are very good right now. Like, the Ranger card pool is just incredibly powerful. And I think it feels very weird to put Riptide in A, because I think for many months I had him in D tier. But I think he's A. I think there are two very different ways to build Riptide. There is the defensive trap-based version and the aggressive version, and it's really hard to know what you're pairing into, which causes people to not be able to sideboard correctly unless they know in advance what's going on. And then we also have Azalea here. Azalea's been good. She's still good. She has a little bit of consistency issues, but I think she's good. Aurora best aggro deck? We'll see. We're getting to the Rosetta heroes at the end, but Aurora's looking pretty strong. If you stay after the tier list, we will look at Decklists as well. Let's see. We have Unsheathed next. This is your next sword attack this turn gets +3, and when this attacks, if its power is greater than twice its base, it gets to go again. So this will just always give Centauri Saber go again. That's mostly what you're going to use it on. It doesn't work on Dawnblade by itself because I think it has to be greater than twice its base, so it increases to 6 and needs to be at least 7. But as you can see by Kasai holding her Centauri Sabers on the art, it's going to be pretty good for her. Verdant's aggro. Yeah, maybe a Verdant's aggro, who knows? But yeah, I think Kasai was not really seen in the meta because her Zen matchup was really bad. Looking at the meta now, she has historically one of the best KO matchups. She's probably an okay assassin matchup, or even a very good assassin matchup into new. Her Rhinar matchup might be a little rough, but then historically Warrior's pretty good into Ranger as well. So it seems to me like she beats almost everything here. So I will put her in A tier, which is a huge increase as well from where she was before, which was probably like C tier. I think this is a really new powerful card for her, and I think the meta has shifted to be favorable towards Kasai. It's an assassin grinder. Kasai is it's a really bad matchup for assassin, particularly new. I think Azuri has a better chance because Azuri does have piercing on both of her weapons usually, which makes Valiant Dynamos worse, but I think it's still Kasai favored. We have a bit of a suite of new Illusionist cards. Calming Cloak, Calming Gesture, and Flutter Steps. These first two just have Arcane Barrier and then can be destroyed to do certain things. So this one makes your next aura cost less, and this one create a Spectral Shield. And this one has Ward 1, and when it's destroyed, you can play your next aura. This turn is over in an instant. These are interesting. Maybe they will see play in Enigma or Prism. I don't really see where these are better than any of their current equipment options. But Arcane Barrier 1 and Ward 1, they have interesting effects that maybe could be broken. I just don't really see where they fit at the moment. But maybe you could find this one maybe has some potential. I don't know, the Illusionist equipment suite's already quite good, so I don't think it'll affect them too much. Also, we got another Dromai card, and Dromai's Living Legend. This is a Briar card as well, so these last two ones are just for Living Legend. So we're done with expansion slot stuff after this, and we'll go talking about the rest of the heroes and then the main set. There's going to be a massive tier list, by the way. I think there's 31 legal heroes after Rosetta, which is kind of insane. Teching in scale plus Orbito, yeah. I think that would be helpful into Kazai, especially if it becomes popular. Yeah, so Illusionist, I think Enigma was A tier maybe already or a high B tier, but she just had a really bad Zen matchup. But she really does beat up the Assassins pretty well. She's not bad into KO, and yeah, she's pretty good into Rangers unless they're running Murkmire Grapnel. She is quite favored into the Warriors, so I think the Illusionist, both Enigma and Prism, are in a very good spot right now as well. The tier list, like I said, it's going to be quite big because we have 30s plus heroes to go through. But yeah, I think this will be pretty good meta for Illusionist, especially since we have Wizards coming into it. Illusionist does often have a bad matchup into Runeblade, so that if the Runeblades end up being very good, that could bring them both down a bit. Particularly could bring Enigma down. Prism can always do something because she has just these massive heralds, but it might bring Enigma down to B tier level if the Runeblades end up being very good. I do think I should maybe bump up some heroes here because we're getting some pretty big A tier. Maybe we should say some more crazy stuff here. We'll put New in S tier, I think. I think New relative to the rest of the A tier is good enough and can have a good KO matchup. We'll bump New up a bit. Try to make space. I don't think I can just throw everything into A tier. Okay, now let's bang out the rest of the heroes up to Rosetta. Arachne, just by far the worst assassin. Probably deserves C tier, but I'm just going to continue to disrespect him there. Bolton is fine, but continues to under-impress me in most ways, so I'll put him in C tier and just disrespect him as well. Bravo's hot garbage. Like by far the worst Guardian right now. Dorinthea's okay, but I think with the buff to Kasai, with the new expansion card, I think you'd rather play her as a Valiant Dynamo deck. Also, Kasai is a bit less weak to Siren's Call because she plays less blues, so I don't think Dorinthea is the best place to be. Fi is dead just like Katsu. Kano, I mean, I had him in A tier before, but he just had so much banned. I'll put him down to a super disrespectful D tier. Levia's been fine. She's probably still fine. But I think she's probably the weakest brute now. Olympia's garbage as well. What do we have left? The two older Rune Blades. So we've got... These are kind of interesting because they both got some decent buffs with this set. I think, based on what we've seen, these are both getting a pretty decent buff. But they did lose Cashin. Well, Viscerai lost Cashin, which is pretty good for him. And Vincent, I've always been a little underimpressed by. I think I'm going to give... I mean, I just wish he had a better weapon. I really want to put him in A tier and make all the Runeblade fans happy. but I think I'll put him in B tier, unfortunately. I'll put Vincent in C tier. I think she still doesn't have all the consistency she would want. Now let's talk about Rosetta. So Rosetta brought a whole lot of cards and 4 new heroes to the meta, bringing back talents in a big way, and particularly some of the strongest talents the game has ever seen. Ice is still probably the strongest talent, and of course they avoided Ice this time. But the elemental talents in general are really strong. There's quite a lot of banned heroes, or living legend heroes, I should say, with the elemental talents. So it's definitely a set we should look at pretty seriously. You can see they held back in some areas for making it too broken, particularly both the new weapons are not very good for the rune blades compared to Rosetta Thorn that we got the first time around. But overall, the set does seem like it'll have some power to it. So we'll start with the rune blades. Let's start with Aurora, actually. Aurora is the essence of lightning rune blade, so can play lightning cards and elemental cards. She has the classic 440, and she has once per turn instant. For 2 resources, you can create an embodiment of lightning token. Activate this only if you played a lightning card this turn. Now, embodiment of lightning tokens just pop when you attack with a weapon or an attack action, and gives it go again. Do they pop on weapons? Maybe they don't pop on weapons. Oh, come on, you don't show me an embodiment of lightning? It's kind of rude. Embodiment. Just attack actions. Okay, I knew I was doubting myself for a reason. Yeah, so your next attack action you play destroys the embodiment of lightning and gets go again. Yeah, I mean, I do think the text box is semi-useless with how I've thought about building her at the moment. Lightning historically has been able to play almost entirely 0 cost. And you can see both of her like rare majestic slot cards. These are all 0 cost. If you look to the lightning cards, like 0 cost, 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 they're either 0 or 1, right? Now, if you build the deck more with blues and 1 cost, then you can consistently have it so you have the 1 cost and then you have the embodiment. Of course, also combos well with the weapon. Then it puts the tier list. Okay, we're figuring out as we go, all right? Yeah, the weapon does, of course, intentionally go well with the hero ability. You can use a blue to evenly attack for 2 go again with Starfall if you've played a lightning card this turn and make an embodiment. But turning a blue into 2 damage plus an embodiment, still not that great, especially if you don't really need the embodiment that much. I would much rather like turn a blue into 4 damage than turning it into 2 go again plus an embodiment. So I don't think that's what's going to matter. I think what's going to matter is how broken the rest of her card pool is, because lightning cards are just insane rates. Like, her specialization, Arc Lightning, is incredible. It's 0 cost, go again. Whenever you go again this turn, deal 1 arcade damage to any target. The next action card you play this turn gets go again. And this counts going again on weapons, going again on equipment. So this can end up dealing like 5, 6 arcane damage in little pings of 1. And then it also gives something go again. So it's doing so much for 1 card that it's really good. Looking at Burn Up Shock, this is 0 cost, deals 1 damage right away, and then the next time an attack you control hits, deal 4. So this is a 0 for 5. Of course you have to hit, but you'll play this against other aggro decks primarily that don't want to block you. And then this is a 0 for 5, which is really incredible. So she has the really good rates. I think she will be one of the premier aggro decks. Do I want to put her in S tier? I think her biggest weakness is that she blocks pretty poorly overall. Looking at a lot of the good lightning cards when I scroll down, if we look at stuff like Fry, that doesn't block at all. you're going to be playing some number of instants that don't block, but we have a lot of like, you'll play this which blocks for 2, this which blocks for 2, this instant you'll play which doesn't block at all. So I don't think she's going to block very well, and Disruption is quite strong at the moment. She'll be pretty weak to the weakest link, to Command and Conquer, stuff like that. And she'll have to really rely on her equipment suite to get her through those. She doesn't have like as broken of an equipment suite as Zen or KO. So I would love to just slam her in S tier because she does a lot of damage. But I think she's more like an A tier, maybe a B tier. She does some of the highest damage output in the game. Like I think she will be hitting the ceiling for the meta for damage output. But I think she's kind of similar to Dash.io in the sense that she's like this full glass cannon. Does a massive amount of damage, but you throw one Command and Conquer at her and she's not having a good time. So I'll give her a really optimistic A. But I don't know how well it's going to work out. Looking at our other Rune Blade, Florian, he has a fairly disappointing weapon as well with Rotroad Reaper. It's a 2 for 2 damage, which is horrible. If you've played or created an aura this turn, it gets +2. So conditional 2 for 4, and 2 for 4 is just fine. So it's conditionally okay and normally horrible. Hero ability, though, is very interesting. In Classic Constructed, it says, if there are 8 or more Earth cards in your Banish Zone, Florian gets if you would create 1 or more Aura tokens, instead create that many +1 of each of those tokens. This is really, really, really powerful once turned on. Every time you would make 1 Rune Chant, you make 2. Every time you'd make 1 Embodiment, you make 2. A Vigor, you make 2. Really, really powerful. The main question is, how fast can you banish 8 Earth cards? The answer is probably not as fast as you need. Like, you can definitely banish 8 Earth cards, but can you banish them quick enough to compete with the rest of the meta? Probably, maybe. He has quite a good suite of Decompose cards here, with Felling the Crown and Plow Under. Decompose, of course, says when this attacks, you can banish 2 Earth cards and an action card from your graveyard. If that action card's Earth, then you need to play 3 of these, essentially. You'll essentially always have to play 3 Decompose minimum, because then you'll be banishing 9 cards, and you need 8 of those 9 to be Earth cards. Of course, you have to get those Earth cards into your graveyard first by blocking with them most of the time, or playing with them, playing them out. But yeah, it is quite slow. You have a blank hero ability until then. I think the Decompose cards are good, but he does struggle to like use all his cards that well. He also can make these Embodiment of Earths, but doesn't have a lot of 3-block non-attacks that are great to use them effectively. Certainly no Briar. I've also looked at using him with Channel Mountain Heroic, but without access to the Lightning cards, he really has a low amount of action points. And if you look at his Earth card suite that he's going to try to use, it blocks really, really poorly. I mean, his only 3 blocks are his Majestics and Autumn's Touch, essentially. So I'm not that confident on Florian. I will give him an optimistic B. He might end up realistically like C, but I think I'll once again be optimistic and put him in B tier here. I really think the Rune Blades are lacking like a great weapon. Like their best weapon is probably Reaping Blade right now, which is 1 resource for 3 damage. Just like on rate and fine, but really nothing particularly special. And compared to a lot of the other weapons in the game, can be quite poor. Although maybe it'll be good with Verdance if Verdance ends up being pretty good. Speaking of, let's go look at the Wizards. Are they all up here at the top together, actually? I think they might be. Yeah. So Verdance has a similar text box to Florian, where she also requires 8 or more Earth cards. But she gets, whenever you deal, or whenever you gain life, sorry, during your turn, You may deal 1 arcane damage to any opposing hero. This is pretty strong. Getting double value from gaining life is great. For example, her specialization, 1 to gain 3 life and have go again. It's already like playable, I'd say. It's like a slightly weaker Sigil of Solace, but it also blocks 3 and is a blue. So I think most decks would be happy to play this. At least defensive decks would be pretty happy to play this. But once her hero ability's on, it also shoots for 1 arcane every time. So then it's a 1 for 3 life and 3 damage with go again. So 1 for 6 go again. Just pretty incredible. It's also arcane damage, so it's not as easy to prevent for a lot of decks. She has this powerful Majestic as well, where you amp, which means your next arcane deals that much more damage, where X is the total life you gain this turn. So this can be a huge finisher by, you're always going to get the 1 here, but if you've gained 6 other life, then you're hopefully dealing damage every time you gain that life through your hero ability. So you'll deal 7 damage or whatever through the life gain. And then you'll also boost your next arcane by 7. So Rampant Growth life is going to be probably a main finisher for Verdance. I don't know how she's going to be built specifically. You're going to need some number of attack actions mixed in, because most of the Decompose is these attack actions, plus the Rootbound Carapace, which I think will, of course, be played as 3 of as well, because it's a 4-block defense reaction that decomposes. But that's the only Decompose card that's not an attack action, so you'll still need to play probably Felling the Crown and Plow Under, for example, and you'll likely play Cadaverous Tilling as well. So you will have some number of attack actions mixed in. You might play Fruits of the Forest too, because this can be a 3 for 7 attack, or you can also discard it to gain life, which is great on the first turn, and can shoot for 1 arcane, so it becomes gain 2 life, deal 1, which is kind of on rate with Sigil of Solace when you have your hero ability on. It also turbos Earth cards into your grave to be banished. So I don't know the ideal way that Verdance is going to be built, but I do see a lot more potential in her. She also has a weapon that I quite like, Staff of Verdant Shoots. The rate when you actually activate it is quite bad. It's just 3 resources to amp 1 with go again, so you're trading a whole blue for 1 damage, which is quite poor. But the second part says when 1 or more Earth cards are pitched this way, the next time you deal arcane damage this turn, create an Embodiment of Earth token. Now, Embodiment of Earth, like I was saying, in Florian are not as helpful because he plays quite a lot of 2-block non-attacks, so it just kind of bumps them up to 3. But Verdance is going to be playing mostly 3-block non-attack actions like Heart of Candlehold, and then they become 4 blocks once you have Staff online. I don't think you're going to be doing this every turn because the rate is quite bad, just a blue for amp 1. You're probably never going to do it, of course, when you're just attacking with a Decompose. You're just going to be blocking with 2 cards and then swinging with this. Very like Icelander style. I do think she's going to maybe feel a little like Bullander because you're going to be playing some number like 9 to 12 copies of 3-cost attacks. So going to be a little, I mean, if you liked Bullander, you'll probably like Verdance. But when you want to go for arcane damage, or if your opponent slows down a little, you can use an extra card that you have, an extra blue, to let you block better on the next turn. So if they go to set up, they use like a 3-card hand and then Arsenal, and you can then have an extra card to Staff of Verdant Shoots. When they go for their 5-card hand, you'll have that Embodiment of Earth to survive it significantly easier. So pretty interesting weapon that won't be used every turn. It's not going to be like some heroes like KO that wants to be using it every single turn for the most part. But it will be nice when you have the extra card to use it. All that to say, I think Verdance is good. I think I'm feeling good about Verdance. I will put her in A tier. I think she'll be one of the better defensive decks in the meta. She could be S tier. Sorry, I'm just thinking about it further and like, did she destroy these 2 heroes? She might beat KO quite well, because KO historically has had a little bit of trouble if he's getting like fatigued. Not that he can play around it, of course, like he can play Cast Bones and stuff, but maybe you play like Scours. It's kind of interesting. I'll put her in a confident A tier position. But now we're going to end with Cilio. I've just been calling him Silly because I can never spell his name correctly. Actually, I think my image file of him is spelled all wrong now that I see his name again. But he is the other wizard. This one's the lightning wizard. He has a simpler ability in a way. It just says once per turn instant, discard an instant, draw a card. So you get to filter an instant once per turn on your turn and your opponent's, discarding it and drawing a card. That is pretty cool. His weapon also says if you control an aura permanent with sigil in its name, this costs 1 less to activate, and it only costs 1, so it'll be free if you ever have a sigil permanent out. And it says amp X, where X is the number of lightning cards you played this turn. Now this is like by far the strongest weapon by itself in the set, because I don't think either of the Runeblade weapons are very good. I think Verdance's weapon will be occasionally good, depending on the game state, but I think Cilio's weapon is going to be the one that you want to activate essentially every turn. Since you can often make it free, you get such a big payoff for playing your sigils because they also kind of give you a free resource. And this can become a massive amp. Where X is the number of lightning cards you played this turn, he's certainly going to be a glass cannon build because it pays you off so much. You're really not going to want to do any blocking with the Cilio, or at least very little blocking, I think, because you're going to be able to just play 3 lightning cards out, 4 lightning cards out, amp 4, and then throw a massive arcane damage spell at the end. So you just get such a payoff for keeping all your cards with Volzar that I don't see him that interested in blocking. He gets some pretty powerful sigils too, like his specialization. When this leaves the arena, draw a card. It does destroy itself at the beginning of your action phase, but you have ways to bounce sigils. So you could play this, and then before it goes and destroys itself, you could bounce it back to your hand, drawing a card, and yeah, just basically being a 0-cost draw card that also makes your weapon free, which is pretty insane. We've got some powerful arcane spells like Comet Storm, Shock to really throw massive chunks. I mean, this is 4 resources for 6 damage or 2 for 5, but this can really use your amp pretty well. And then if we scroll down to the lightning cards, they printed some, I have to say, quite strong lightning cards. In this set, we have Flash of Brilliance, which lets you return that aura to your hand. Like I was saying, when this defends, you discard a lightning card if you do return an aura you control. So this lets you bounce that specialization sigil, which might be a good reason to play it. Eclectic Magnetism is a really powerful Majestic. Once attacks, you may play a non-attack action card. This chain link is lowered instant, so throwing out those big arcane spells for free. Gone in a Flash. When this attacks, the next time you play an instant card this chain link, you may return this to its owner's hand. So you get to play it another time if you play this and then a sigil and then play this. Yeah, really incredible stuff. The first time you deal damage to an opposing hero each turn, draw a card, also counts on their turn. So if you instant speed some arcane damage at them on their turn, you can draw like 2 cards off of this. So the lightning card suite, I think, is measurably better than the Earth suite, in my opinion. This set, the Earth suite is also quite good. Like I'm not saying it's bad. Some of these Majestics are both really good. Rootbound Carapace is pretty nice, but some of these Majestics and even rares like Electromagnetic Somersault, it's kind of a 0 block 6 if you return 2/3 blocks that you blocked with to your hand. So there's some really, really powerful stuff in the Lightning Suite. And I think Cilio will be able to do some massive glass cannon damage. I think most of the Kano players are going to become Cilio players, because I think he can do those huge combo kills that they're used to doing without needing all the tomes. So I will put him in A tier as well. Now, maybe we should reorganize this a little, now that we're near the end, and kind of establish where everyone will end up. I would like to build a bit of a bigger S tier here. Something like this. Rearrange that. Problem is these wizards are going to have a lot of trouble into the illusionists, which makes me a little sus on them. I feel like the illusionists are going to be quite good. But if the illusionists are good, it's a bit of a triangle meta, right? If the illusionists are good, the Runeblades can beat them, right? Runeblades have a very favored matchup into illusionists. And if the Runeblades are good, maybe the wizards beat them. But the wizards lose to the illusionists. A little hard balancing this top. I think these 3 heroes will end up pretty good. I think Prism as well. I'm not really sure on like these 5 at the front. I do think Viserai will be a pretty good Runeblade as well. I think these are probably all staying in A tier. Yeah, you think I rate Viserai or Kasai too high? I think Kasai is probably too high as well. I think Kasai, I'm mostly thinking about Kasai beating these 2. She does lose pretty horribly to Illusionist, in particular to Enigma. I don't think she loses that hard to Prism. Yeah, Enigma, yes, Prism not. Yeah, I think she beats, or not beats, but has an okay game into Prism. I think Enigma's pretty bad. Maybe it's just a huge A tier. I think we'll stick with this. I really think any of these 5 heroes at A tier. I think okay, to clarify, when I make a tier list, I think anything in A tier or S tier could win a calling or pro tour, etc. I think S tier just maybe is what people build around more. Like these are the really powerful parts of the meta, and I think this is what we will see the most. But I think all of these heroes are really strong. Like Azuri won the Pro Tour, and I still think Azuri wasn't the best or top 5 hero, but I think Azuri was just a good meta call. And meta calls are really important in Flesh and Blood. So just because I put a hero in A tier doesn't mean it can't win a Pro Tour or a calling if it's a good meta call. If you think, okay, these are the top 4 heroes, but my hero beats these 2 really well, maybe it's still worth bringing, right? I think C tier and D tier are going to struggle to win anything, and then B tier is kind of that middle tier where maybe sometimes you can win a top event, but maybe sometimes you'll just do horribly. So I think that's the, like these are the 2 tiers that are really strong, these are the 2 tiers that aren't as good, and then this tier in the middle is kind of figuring out where it's going to end up. Zen is a lower tier. I think that remains to be seen. Zen still has a lot of powerful stuff. The Mystic class is just really good. Like Mystic is one of the best talents in the game for sure, since they've added it. You can see like I have an S tier and an A tier, and I thought about putting this Mystic in the S tier. But we'll call the tier list here for the first tier list of Rosetta. Pretty speculative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cut. Yeah, okay. Well, we're talking on the stream still. That is the end of the video. That's kind of how I'm going to try to do the streams now in all my videos, is do the video in the stream. So it's kind of an interactive video where I can talk to you guys, but then I'm going to edit that video out after, so I have like the intro and the exit still. But then if you're watching the stream now, we can talk a lot more, and the video won't be 2 hours long, because I could talk for 2 hours, but it's just going to be like a 45-minute tier list video. And now you and me and everyone on the stream, we can talk a bit more about what I think the meta is going to look like. Particularly, we're going to go into deck lists for the new heroes. I will, of course, like in the future, be having deck techs for the new heroes once we know a bit more. But I think it's a bit silly to do a deck tech at the moment, considering the decks aren't even out, and like I'm just one guy. I don't think I'm going to be able to figure out the decks completely solo. So we're kind of just going to discuss where they are. So starting with Aurora, because I think Aurora is simplest. I talked in the tier list about how there are like 2 main ways to play Aurora that I can think of when we start, which is one that's based a lot more around blues, like you'll probably run 15 to 18 blues and you're going to plan on using Starfall every turn and your hero ability off of blue, and then playing more like zero costs that don't have go again, because then you can, of course, give them go again with your hero ability. You'll still be mostly using zero cost because you're going to be using all your resources on weapon plus your hero ability, but you can maybe get a bigger advantage out of that embodiment of lightning. This version of the deck basically pretends like your hero box and your weapon don't exist for the most part, unfortunately. And it's just like full red line, 51 reds, 3 blues, and 6 yellows. And we're just playing those 3 blues and 6 yellows because they're good cards. These are all like Majestics. It's mostly just an all red deck that just tries to throw its whole hand every turn and not really block. As many 0 for 5s as possible. So Arcanic Shockwave, if it's fused, deals 1 arcane damage. This is a 0 for 5. This is a 0 for 5. Static Shock is a 0 for 5. Then we've got a lot of 0 for 4s with Go Again. 0 for 4, 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 0 for 4. We've got a lot of 0 for 3s to support that. So we have to have some number of lightning cards that just will always go again. So we've got Fry, Sizzle, Weave Lightning, Lightning Press, Electrostatic Discharge. These are all lightning non-attacks with go again or instants, which will be good to either fuse or flow into our cards, because we need some number of that. And some stuff cares about having already attacked or dealt damage that turn. Outside of that, I mean, you're just throwing damage every turn. We've got some powerful Majestics to support that with the Arc Lightning we talked about. Channel Lightning Valley. You'll probably want to pitch a lightning card the turn you do this to keep it around, even if you're pitching a red just to weapon. Let you keep it for one more turn by channeling lightning. But maybe if you get lucky, you draw it with Current Funnel, because this is an actual blue you can pitch. And then you can weapon and hero ability maybe. This is not a bad blue either. It's 3 block. The last action you play this turn was lightning. This and the next attack, the next action card you play this turn gets go again. So it's a 0 for 2 go again, which isn't great, but it does give the next thing go again. So you can give like a snatch go again. So you can go like Fry, Current Funnel into snatch, something like that. But the deck is just trying to do 0 for 4, 0 for 5 as much as possible, even trying stuff like Premeditate to maybe combo with arsenaling our attacks like Lightning Surge. That's basically the deck. It's very simple. The sideboard is like 6 poppers and then 6 D-Reacts or pseudo D-Reacts. This is the one that can target 2 attack actions with cost 0 and then return them to your hand after the Chain Link resolve, so you can like block with 2 Static Shocks for 6 and then you get them both back, which is pretty nice. It's like a 0 for 6 block, hopefully. And then some arcane stuff. Tunic for when the game goes long. Iron Weave is kind of sick because it blocks for 1 and then it has an ability with go again, so it'll actually deal a damage off of Arc Lightning, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think a pretty simple deck. I'm going to work on a version as well, like I said, that has like the 15, 18 blues and plays a lot more cards like Snatch that just don't have any chance of getting go again. But this one is mostly attacks that can get go again. Like this. Almost every attack can get go again. I think the only attacks that can't is Arcanic Shockwave. Arcanic Shockwave, Snatch, Static Shock. I guess Gone in a Flash. So we have like 12 cards that can't get go again. But those are just what you're hoping to end the chain with. So it's not really an issue. But we could play a deck that's like all stuff that doesn't have go again almost. And then you just need to start with like 15 stuff like Fry that can start with go again. So like Fry, Lightning Surge, stuff like that. The problem is there's not a lot that just like starts with go again like that. Maybe something like Sizzle. Sizzle is actually nice because it's the next lightning or elemental attack, so it works on your weapon. So you'll be happy to Sizzle into Starfall, which is kind of nice. Electrostatic Discharge also works because it's just the next attack action you play this turn with cost 1 or less. So that's something we could workshop. Maybe in this stream we'll workshop it. But for now, let's talk about the other decks. We'll talk about Rune Blades first. These are all kind of just what I've been brewing with. I tried to build a Channel Mount Heroic Florian, and maybe this will exist and I'm just not good enough to brew it up. But it feels like we're definitely lacking on the powerful 0 cost. We've got Rune Rage. Rune Rage or Swarm is a nice one we just got. Of course, we always have Swarming Gloomveil, and we have Ravenous Rabble. But man, the lightning cards, you don't realize how key those were in Briar. Stuff like the Entwined Lightnings and the Lightning Surges were really good go again attacks that were key to Channel Mount Heroic Briar. This deck maybe could work. You get E-Strike, Rabble, Scar for a Scar, maybe Overload works okay. But I'm certainly not as confident. I guess the Art of War needs to come out, huh? Yeah, you can see I haven't edited this one in a minute. Or I did actually, because I'd added recent cards, but then forgot to take out the Art of War. You could play like Yellow Rabble. Maybe Meet and Greets, even though they cost 1. But yeah, I'm not as sure. It's an interesting deck. And I love Channel Mount Heroic, so maybe I'll try to make this deck work, because I just really like Channel Mount Heroic. The problem is all your Decompose cards cost more than 0, unless they're the Carapace. So like, this isn't an attack, so it doesn't synergize with Channel Mount Heroic, and it needs to Decompose. And then your Decompose attacks cost at least 2. Yeah, just not great. Not great synergy there. This is, I assume, how they imagine you'll play Florian. Well, I guess they weren't using Nebula Blade, but I think Nebula Blade's probably going to be Florian's best weapon because of its synergy with its hero ability. So if his hero ability is online, this, you turn it on, it attacks for 4, and if it hits, it makes 2 rune chance, which is really good. I mean, 2 resources for 6 value on a weapon is really, really good. That's like Anathos value. Of course, you have to work for it a little bit. There is probably the best new card to go with it is Condemned to Slaughter. This just says your next Rune Blade. Honestly, the bottom part doesn't matter. It's just your next Rune Blade attack this turn gets +3. So 1 for 3, and to attack for this for 7. Threaten to make 2 rune chance, so it's like a 2-card 9. I think you're probably going to be playing around stuff like that. So also stuff like Harvest Season or Strong Yield, which also synergizes just on future turns. Rune Blade Incantation. All 12 of these cards turn on Nebula Blade, and then you leave 2 floating to attack with it. So this deck's really heavily based on using Nebula Blade. I think Condemned to Slaughter is the best because it's the only one that blocks 3. So that's really nice. I wish we had more stuff like this that blocked 3 and cost 1 to turn it on. All the others, Harvest Season, Strong Yield, Rune Blood Incantation, only block 2, unfortunately. Including Malefic Incantation. This one's maybe not good enough to stay in the deck. So I think the goal is mostly block with Earth cards early, decompose the 3 times you need, and then turn into like a defensive Nebula Blade deck. That's my theory, at least, is try to be this more defensive Nebula Blade like 2-card hand deck. And then if your opponent gives you the chance, because you have these go again non-attacks, maybe you can go a bit wider with a 4-card hand. Maybe this deck needs something like 2 E-Strikes and 2 Swarming Gloomveils to let it go a bit wider. Could also include like Runic Reckonings. The problem is if we add in all 9 of these cards, these let us use much wider hands, but they decrease the amount of Earth cards we can have. I think they're probably better than this Malefic Incantation, but you really need this like high quantity of Earth cards to be able to actually like block out and decompose effectively. So I'm not sure, like this is maybe too many. It's gonna be tricky. I know I'm at 66, this needs to be trimmed somehow, but I do think you maybe want some number of like this Runic Reckoning, Swarming Gloomveil, E-Strike, because you need to be able to go wider. But you really need so many Earth cards. Yeah, brewing with Florian has been tricky. You just need such a large quantity of Earth cards to be able to do the thing. And it really limits how many slots you have. Because you need like, how many is this running? 42 Earth cards? And you probably need something like 40 Earth cards. Because you want to like draw your, for every hand to have like 2 or 3. Like this hand sucks, first of all. But yeah, I mean like, just block with everything and throw Swarming. This is why I had Florian down in B tier. I've been really struggling to see how a Florian deck comes together consistently, like really consistently doing its value proposition like every turn. Just not really seeing it. Looking at Verdance, I have like quite a few Verdance decks. I don't know what I was doing with all of these multiple Verdance decks. These are like the same thing, right? Oh, this is maybe a early copy. I think Verdance can be quite strong. Some of the new cards Verdance got. Mental Block is kind of incredible. Prevent 2 damage by discarding it, and then you make a Ponder, so it's effectively just a free 2 health, right? Because it replaces itself with a Ponder. So you're just blocking 2 and then drawing a card. Feels like that shouldn't exist. She uses like Rootbound Carapace, stuff like Channel the Millennium Tree a bit better, because she can let it block for 4. Kind of interesting. I don't know what I made with the different species. I think I like this one a bit more. This is interesting. This one's built around Crucible of Aetherweave, and then Swell Tidings and Pulsing Aether, because they both cost 2. This one, you pay 1 twice for the 4 in this, and then this costs 2, so you'll have 1 floating both times, so you can like 2-card hand them with Crucible. This one's like the most defensive version. It basically just wants to block and throw 2-card hands, like Fiendel's Fruits of the Forest, Felling of the Crown, Cadaverous Stilling. Kind of a more attack action heavy deck, and then maybe finishes with like a huge Rampant Growth on Pulsing Aether or something. I actually do like some of these Earth equipments, like Well Grounded and Helm. They both can effectively block 2 each, which is not bad on equipment to just block for 2. But they also count as Earth for Decompose, which is pretty nice. So I think it's worth considering the Earth-specific equipment. Of course, Barkskin does that as well, which is pretty nice. And this one blocks for 3 and makes an embodiment of Earth. So Barkskin is kind of insane. I also made this really funny Vernon's deck. Oops, all life gain. It plays all 9 counter blessings. This card's somewhat interesting. I feel like in a world, one day this card will be broken. Because it's horrible on its base, right? It's a 2-cost instant, so it doesn't even block. And it says gain X life, where X is 1 for the blue, 2 for the yellow, 3 for the red, plus the number of count your blessings in your graveyard. So it's like, if it's your first one, it's the most expensive Sigil of Solace of all time, right? Because it costs 2 to gain 3 life as an instant, which is really bad. But if you are playing it as your 9th copy, if you have gotten all other 8 count your blessings into your graveyard, it's 3 plus 8, so it gains you 11 life for 2 resources. I mean, who doesn't want to gain 11 life for 2 resources, right? That's kind of crazy. Do I want to test the decks against Zen? Maybe in a future stream. I don't think everything's on Talishar yet, and I also don't really feel confident in any of these decks. They're all pretty early theory crafts, but I would be happy to do a gameplay stream in the next week or 2 and test some early concepts of the decks, but I think I just want to make sure everything's functional on Talishar first. But yeah, this is like a uber life gain deck. The idea is to get all your yellow and your blue count the blessings in your grave via discards effects. So like Call to the Grave to search for it and put it in, Trade in and Rally the Rearguard lets you discard them for value, and Sigil of Cycles. So you have like 9 ways to discard them, plus Call to the Grave to tutor for it. Obviously trying to get the yellows in first. The blues are fine because they're a blue, but then once they're stacked up, if you can get all 6 of your yellows and blues in your grave, then you can gain 9 off this, gain 10 off this, gain 11 off this, which is 30 life off of 3 cards and 6 resources. So if you can do it in like 1 turn off a 5-card hand, you gain 30 life off 5 cards. I know we're in dreamland. I'm not saying this is like a realistic meta deck, but but it is kind of a proof of concept of something that you can do that's pretty interesting. The downside is that you want to decompose, and you can't decompose these out of your graveyard because they need to stay there. But it's kind of an interesting deck. Who knows? Maybe Count Your Blessings will be good. It's interesting. Acilio, I think I've messed around with the least. I do think Etchings of Arcana is pretty absurd. This is like, I think this deck is before most of the spoilers are out, so maybe we can mess with this one together. Yeah, this one's like well before all the, oh my god, I can't type. Well before all the stuff, because you're definitely playing that Arms over these Stonewall. You're probably playing this over Crown of Providence. Are you playing Lightning Greaves over Stormstriders? Maybe. I don't know if you're playing that over Stormstriders. And then I think you want like way more of the sigils, right? What does this one do? It's only on attack actions, unfortunately. I think you're probably playing the Eclectic Magnetism. Maybe the Eternal Inferno too. Yeah, but this Etchings is probably your best card, right? Because if it deals more than 3, you can return an aura with Sigil in its name from your graveyard to your hand. So it can like also draw a card if you get to return your Sigil of Brilliance or something like that, which is really, really good. Gone in a Flash, probably playable as well. Next time you play an instant card this turn, you return it, so you can play it with a... this deck actually uses its like embodiments of lightning pretty well, so you probably do want both Sigil of Lightning and Sigil of Conductivity, because you have stuff like Eclectic Magnetism and Gone in a Flash to get go again. Is Verdance just screwed against Reaping Blade? Yeah, I don't see how Verdance beats Reaping Blade. I think you might want to just give that one up. I mean, you can like attack them over and over, or you can like maybe you just like, keep attacking them and just taking all the damage until you're lower, and then you try to gain the life up. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I mean, you probably play all the 0 for 4 attacks in this deck, right? So, Gone in a Flash, Lightning Surge, Blast to Oblivion, Glittering Charge. This feels kind of Room Bladey. It's probably all the ones you need though, right? Then just some sigils to round it out, because we're only on 18 blues. Maybe this deck doesn't really need blues though. I mean, if you're all 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 0 for 4, and this is free, what are you paying resources for? Glyph Overlay? Is that it? Comet Storm? Eternal Inferno? It's not that many things you need resources for. It's 3 red attacks. Oh, Eclectic Magnetism. 12 is then getting in the territory where you need. Yeah, but 18 blues is probably good enough. What sigil cards are left? The last action card. Yeah, you probably want Current Funnel and Destructive Aether Tide, because that's a great amp target. So that's now up to 24 blues anyways, right? Definitely don't want that. Do you even want Mental Block? Yeah, see, now we're at like 27 blues. I'm not sure if you want Mental Block, but you probably want Sigil of Aether, right? If you amp this, then it's more likely to deal damage and then in turn amp you. That sounds pretty nice. I don't think you want any of the other sigils. Maybe Will of Arcana too. And it's probably all the blues, but that's quite a lot of blues. Do we need 31 blues? No, we don't need Heaven's Claw. Or probably Blue Glyph Overlay. I think you do want all these sigils. Do we want blue Etchings of Arcana? I mean, I did just say it's like one of our best cards. I guess we'll trim 1 to go to 60. 24 blues, 30 reds, 6 yellows. How's this look? I think I like this. Early start to Acilio. I mean, this seems very strong. You just don't block for shit. Well, you do actually block for shit in terms of like you have quite a few 3 blocks, but then you also have like 15 no blocks. But mostly, I mean, you don't block because you're just trying to Volzar. But it seems like you could Volzar do quite a bit of damage. I just don't know how this deck's going to work in terms of hands because it's so interesting. If you play this, you amp for free, but like you can't use that amp. Mental block. It's pretty interesting. Or you just like amp 1, throw 6. I think you probably are trying to set up like a bunch of sigils. It does seem like the sigil that just stays in play, like Sigil of Conductivity, actually might be one of your best. Because if you're hopefully against a deck that doesn't deal Arcane, it's just permanently out there, right? So Volzar is always free. Because the other ones all destroyed themselves at the beginning of your action phase. Yeah, all of them do. Is there any of the sigils that don't also destroy themselves at the beginning of your action phase? Because you might want those as well. No, they all do, huh? Yeah, they all do. So Sigil of Conductivity seems pretty key then. Okay, well, I think that's an example of an Acilio deck. I talked a bit about the Aurora deck, the Verdance decks. I think they're all going to be pretty interesting. I appreciate you guys joining and listening to me discuss the meta, some of the decks that will be there as an example. What it might look like. Like I said, I will be posting a video that's just to talk about the tier list after this. But appreciate you all joining. Hope you have a great Sunday? A great Sunday. And I will see you at the next stream.